Hello everyone out there in YouTube land, and welcome back to my channel for another exciting episode of the Scent Maven's Movie Corner. Now, if you're wondering why it took me so long to upload episode number 2, which is this one, it's because I keep screwing up this video. I have refilmed this video like I can't tell you how many times, more than 10 times, and I tried uploading it and I got error messages and it's just been a disaster. It's like YouTube doesn't want me to put up this video. But anyway, so let's talk about the movies that I'm going to be reviewing this week. So we're going to take a look at Get Hard, The Voices, The Towering Inferno, and Rear Window. And as I've been doing and will do in future episodes, I will talk to you about when the movie came out, what its rating was on the tomato meter on Rotten Tomatoes, which is a compilation, a tally, if you will, of all critic reviews and audience reviews. And I'll also tell you how long the movie is, who it stars, the plot, such and such. Okay, so let's start with the first movie, Get Hard. Came out in 2015, stars Will Ferrell and Kevin Hart. 29% of critics liked it and 49% of audiences liked it, but that still gave it a rating of rotten. So the movie's an hour and 47 minutes long. Let me start by saying that I like this movie. I like Will Ferrell as an actor. I think Kevin Hart is really funny and super hot, so it was a good combination for me to start off with. What is the movie about? So I'm just going to read the little blurb on the back because it kind of explains it most succinctly. When millionaire hedge fund manager James, played by Will Ferrell, is nailed for fraud and bound for San Quentin, the judge gives him 30 days to get his affairs in order. Desperate, he turns to Darnell, played by Kevin Hart, to prep him for a life behind bars. So what's the movie about in more depth? So Will Ferrell plays a stereotypical rich white guy. He thinks he's in touch with the average Joe, but he really isn't. And all his money and success has really kept him living a sheltered life. He gets nailed for stealing money from the company that he works for, which he hasn't done. He's been framed or set up by someone else. And he gets convicted, and like the description says, judge says you have 30 days, get your stuff in order, you're going to jail. So he doesn't know what to do, so he turns to Darnell, who is played by Kevin Hart, and he runs the car wash in the building where Will Ferrell works, and he washes Will Ferrell's car. So Will Ferrell assumes, because Kevin Hart is black, that he has spent time behind bars and therefore can help him prepare and protect himself for his years in prison. Of course, Darnell has never spent any time in prison. He lives in a suburban neighborhood with his wife and his daughter, has no idea, you know, what to tell Will Ferrell. But Will Ferrell says to him, I'll give you however many thousands of dollars. I forget how much the amount is. And Kevin Hart's character is like, okay, you know, in his mind he's thinking, I'll just be the stereotype he expects him to be, expects me to be. I'll get this money and I'll be able to move to a better neighborhood and send my daughter to a better school. And sort of, it has really funny parts. The thing that's disappointing about this is that the trailer makes the movie look a lot funnier than it actually is. Because with comedies, they tend to shoot and reshoot scenes with different jokes. And I think the jokes that they kept in the trailer are a lot funnier than the ones that made it into the movie. But it's still a funny movie. It's still a good movie. What else can I tell you about it? So, as the movie progresses, Kevin Hart and Will Ferrell sort of become friends, and they sort of understand each other's lives a little better. And then the plot kind of twists into, let's not prepare you for prison. You didn't commit this crime. Let's figure out who did it and make the responsible person go to jail. So that's what they set out to do. I'm not going to tell you the ending. No spoilers. It's not a really complicated plot. It's very simple. It's driven along by the humor of Will Ferrell and Kevin Hart. Will Ferrell, surprisingly, is not the comic relief in this movie. He's more like the straight man, and Kevin Hart is more of the comedian in the film. It's so nice when Will Ferrell is not doing something that is so completely slapstick. I mean, This is not as silly as Step Brothers. It's not on that level. It's more toned down. I think Kevin Hart adds a nice element to it. There are a couple of really funny scenes. My two favorites, actually three favorite scenes. The one where they simulate a prison riot at Will Ferrell's house, like they've outfitted it to look like San Quentin, and they have his housekeeping staff, who is Hispanic, who is sort of like, you know, ready to get back at the rich white guy. They simulate a prison riot. There's another scene where Kevin Hart tries to reenact what it will be like in the prison yard, and he plays three characters, one after the other. One is like the Latino gang member, the other guy is like the effeminate gay guy, and then the third person I think is like the average you know, inmate in the prison, the hardened criminal. And he confronts Will Ferrell with all these characters, and Will Ferrell's like, oh, you know, I don't know what to do. It's just really funny. And the part where Darnell, who is at a loss of what to do next because Will Ferrell doesn't seem to be keeping up with the training, so he takes him to visit his cousin, played by T.I., who is a member of the Crenshaw Kings, who's like this gang, and it's just, you know, hilarity ensues. So it was a really good movie. I give it a thumbs up. I definitely recommend it. If you're a fan of Will Ferrell or Kevin Hart, it's a good movie. Go check it out. So let's look at a clip.
What are you doing, James?
Sad dogging you. You think that's a strategy that could work? Please don't sexually assault me. I'm already too sad.
I go hard when it's alive, never defeat. This ain't no longer your house, man. Peace. I'm a killer. We in San Quentin now. You're in the wrong part of the yard, white boy. You know what's just said?
I'm very confused.
Then go back where you belong.
I don't know where I belong.
I know where you belong. You belong with me.
I don't want that.
We do this, we do it hard. I can get hard. As your incarceration expert, this is my job to prepare you. We are about to simulate a prison riot. That was intense, right?
Actually, I feel fine.
Oh!
What?
You gotta roll, Mayo. Who's Mayo?
It's my gang name. It's short for mayonnaise.
Okay, so I would also like to mention that if you are interested in seeing Will Ferrell in a serious role in an absolutely excellent movie that's one of my favorites of all time, check out Stranger Than Fiction. It was great. I think Will Ferrell should do more movies like this one. Okay, so now moving on to our next film, and that is The Voices. And this came out in 2015, stars Ryan Reynolds. It got 71% on the tomato meter by critics, 55% of audiences liked it, so that certified this movie fresh. This is an hour and 47 minutes long. I believe I screwed up before when I said Get Hard was that long. I don't know how long Get Hard was. I forgot to check. So this is an hour and 47 minutes. So what is it about? So Ryan Reynolds plays Jerry. He's a worker in a bathtub factory in a small town. Because of something traumatic that happened in his childhood, he has some mental issues. He goes to see a psychiatrist who has prescribed medication for him that he should be taking, but he doesn't. So when he's not taking the medication, the world seems great. He can create this utopia in his mind where he has friends and a great apartment and a wonderful you know, place to live, and everything is spectacular. So, but when he does take the medication, he sees the world as it really is, how depressing his life is, how, you know, how horrible his job is, and how he's going nowhere. So this is kind of a hard movie to explain. When we first meet Jerry, we're seeing him not on the meds. So he's happy. He's, you know, he's living his life. He's got a crush on a girl at work. His dog and cat are talking to him, giving him advice, sort of playing maybe the left and right side of his brain. And he actually, because he's off the meds, commits murder several times. And that's the tagline here: hearing voices can be murder. So during a point of desperation, he decides, okay, maybe I should take the medication. And that's a real eye-opener in the movie, because once he takes the medication, you see the world as it really is. You see his world as it really is, and it is disturbing. It's disturbing how he lives. It's just a really wonderful, well, not wonderful moment in the movie, but a really eye-opening, like, oh my God, moment in the movie that makes you love it all the more. And it's at that point that he admits to himself, and he admits to the audience, that he knows that the cat and dog are not really talking to him. He knows that it's really, you know, himself, you know, the different opinions in his own mind that are coming out of the cat and dog. They're not really speaking. So the cat is a regular house cat. He has not Irish accent, a Scottish accent. He sounds like Sean Connery. The dog, which I believe is a bull mastiff, but I could be wrong, he's sort of got a country bumpkin voice. So the dog is sort of like the "it'll be okay, everything's all right" voice in his head, and the cat is like, oh, you know, he's the "you're stupid, you'll never be any good" voice. So it's like the opposites in his mind. So when he commits murder, and he kills this woman that he works with, that he's had this crush on, he chops off her head and puts it in his refrigerator. But when he's not on the meds, it's like he opens the refrigerator, he sees her, he's like, "Good morning, Fiona," and she says good morning back, and she's like, "It's a smashing good morning," and it's wonderful, and the apartment is still clean, and everything's happy and sunshine and all that. And then he kills more people. Then when he goes on the meds, you see the head look like a decapitated head. It's no longer talking to him and being his friend. You see body parts in little Tupperware containers. Very, very disturbing, but such a good movie. And the other thing about Jerry in this movie is that no one seems to know how really sick or damaged he is, except for the psychiatrist. She has the most suspect about that, but his coworkers just think he's an oddball. They really don't know that he's way beyond that. So, really good movie. I definitely suggest checking it out. If you're interested in watching another dark comedy, which is also excellent, I recommend Wrist Cutters, starring Patrick Fugit, right there. And it's about the afterlife for people who commit suicide. So, let's take a look at a clip from The Voices.
How are you doing, Jerry?
They like me at work?
Do you want to get a drink?
As a girl, I like her.
Are you good with cats?
No, the real question is, are cats good with me? Because they pretty much own us.
Oh my God, yeah.
Sometimes they talk to my pets, and they sometimes talk to me, sometimes.
I get that.
You're out your league. Shush, no. I don't care.
Do you ever hear a voice?
Not really.
Jerry.
Hey, Fiona. In her eyes, you're a ridiculous peasant. Kill her, and you'll discover what it feels like to be truly alive. Don't run! Mr. Whiskers, he makes me do bad things.
You totally stopped taking the pills, didn't you?
Don't.
Okay, so our next movie is The Towering Inferno, and I have a lot of complaints about this movie. I did not like it at all. So let's start off with some facts about this. This came out in 1974. 71% of critics liked it. 72% of audiences liked it. It's 2 hours and 45 minutes long. That is the first problem. It has great actors in it. It stars Steve McQueen. Paul Newman and Steve McQueen has other great actors in it. Robert Wagner, William Holden, Faye Dunaway. Great people are in it. But the movie is too damn long, okay? So what is it about? Paul Newman plays this architect who has designed the tallest building in the world at that time, which is about 135 floors. Steve McQueen plays the fire department chief who's called when the building catches fire. So, Paul Newman, as the architect, he requested specific types of electrical wiring for the building to sustain its massive size. The owner of the building, who was running low on money, had asked his son to help cut corners. The son did not follow the specs of the architect, and for that reason, an electrical fire breaks out. just happens to be on the day when they're doing the grand opening of the building and everybody is having a party up on the top floor. Also, in addition to the party going on, there are people who live in apartments on the other floors, and they all have to get out of the building, obviously. So as far as like the actual fire, it's not, the movie's not realistic. It's not exciting. It's like every 15 minutes you hear an explosion and there's like a blast of fire and you're supposed to go, ooh, you know, how scary. And what else? Oh, there's so much smoke. First of all, the smoke doesn't look real. It looks like steam, okay? And for that amount of smoke that's supposed to be in the building, people should be coughing a lot more than they are. Then there's completely ridiculous scenes, like one in which Robert Wagner thinks that he's going to run through a fire-filled room to safety and bring help back to rescue his secretary that he's cheating with by putting a wet towel around his head and claiming that he used to be like a sprint runner in college or whatever, and he could run the mile in 2 minutes flat or whatever it is, and he's gonna put this towel on his head and he's gonna run through the room and he's gonna save them. Obviously he doesn't make it. So the other big problem with this movie is there's no conflict. Other than the fact, well, between the two main characters, other than the fact that Steve McQueen tells Paul Newman, you know, why do you architects keep building these buildings so high, designing them so high without taking into consideration that we can't put out fires on that high a level, on, you know, that tall a building. But after that, they pretty much work together. There's no tension, there's no stress, there's, you know, they're just two guys, and it's just not exciting, and there's no reason why the movie needs to be 2 hours and 45 minutes long. It took me 3 sittings to get through this movie. I watched the first hour, then the next day I watched like the second hour, and then I had to go a third day to watch the ending. I do not recommend this movie. I don't know how anybody finds this exciting. It's just, it was not for me. Do not recommend. Now, this movie is like a really bad version of the Poseidon Adventure with fire. That's how I'm going to define it. The Poseidon Adventure is a much, much better movie. It came out in 1972, so 2 years before the Towering Inferno, and I think because of the great success of the Poseidon Adventure, that's why they decided, well, if we can do it with a boat sinking, why can't we do it with a building on fire? And that's what they did, but it did not work. So Poseidon Adventure, in comparison, is only an hour and 57 minutes. Stars great people: Gene Hackman, Ernest Borgnine, Shelley Winters, and a whole bunch of people that I'm forgetting. Red Buttons, I think, is in it. So 79% of critics liked it, 75% of audiences liked it. So it did better than Towering Inferno, but not by a huge margin. And it was certified fresh also. The great thing, okay, so what is the Poseidon Adventure about? And I really should do its own review, but I'll tell you a little bit about it. So the Poseidon Adventure is about this boat that capsizes. Oh, and Leslie Nielsen is in it too. He plays like the ship captain. Boat hits a tidal wave hits the boat and it capsizes. It flips over. So everyone at this New Year's party is tossed, you know, upside down, and the ship is sinking and water is pouring in from all sides. It's very Titanic-like. And they have to climb from the top of the boat, which is now the bottom, all the way up to get out through the bottom of the boat, which is now the top. And they're being led by Gene Hackman, who's like a no-nonsense minister, and Ernest Borgnine, who I think is like some tough guy, used to be a cop type character. And they keep butting heads as to who's going to get the people out of the boat, who's going to save them, who has the better strategy, who has the better plan. So much better of a movie, exciting, wonderful, highly recommend the Poseidon Adventure. Definitely check that one out. I don't have it in my movie collection currently, but I do plan on getting it soon. Yeah, so now let's look at a clip from the Towering Inferno.
Steve McQueen and Paul Newman race against time as one tiny spark becomes a night of blazing suspense. The Towering Inferno.
It's out of control. It's coming your way.
I should also mention another great disaster movie that I highly recommend is The Day After Tomorrow, starring Dennis Quaid. Excellent movie. And then I think it has Jake Gyllenhaal in it and some other actors. Definitely worth seeing. Special effects are great. Super movie. I think I'm gonna watch this again tonight. Okay, so now we're moving on to our next and last movie, which is Alfred Hitchcock's Rear Window, starring Jimmy Stewart. So what else did I want to say about this movie? I want to see who's the woman in the movie. I know she's super famous. Grace Kelly. His girlfriend is played by Grace Kelly. So, Rear Window. It came out in 1954. It's an hour and 55 minutes. It got 100% on the tomato meter by critics, and 95% of audiences liked it. Now, if you guys watched the last episode that I did, you know that I did not care for North by Northwest, which is another Alfred Hitchcock film. I'm pleased to say Rear Window is a lot better. So what is it about? Jimmy Stewart plays a magazine photographer, right there, and he has recently broken his leg. Well, some weeks ago has broken his leg while he was out on an assignment. So he's confined to his apartment in a wheelchair. He was at some kind of racetrack, you know, and he took a picture of a race car flipping over with fire coming out of it, and he got injured while taking that photo. So for these 6 weeks or so, he's been looking out the rear window of his apartment. I guess he doesn't have a TV or anything to read, so he's in his wheelchair, leg in cast, looking at the people in the building facing his. It's a really hot summer, nobody has their blinds drawn, and he's turning this sort of into his own reality TV, and he's become a peeping Tom, basically. So he watches the people so much during their daily lives that he gives them nicknames. Like there's this one woman who's like a ballerina, and she's always doing like dancing and tiptoeing and exercising, and he calls her Miss Torso because her physique is so wonderful. And then there's another woman who's single who cries at the dinner table because she doesn't have a man, and she's Miss Lonely Hearts. Then there's the salesman who lives with his wife, who's not bedbound, but she's definitely ill, but we never find out what her condition is, her actual disease or illness, whatever it is. But anyway, so the salesman and his wife are always arguing, and all of a sudden Jimmy Stewart notices that the salesman goes out late at night. He comes back, goes out and comes back several times. He takes knives and such with him. Then he notices that he doesn't see the wife anymore, and the salesman is mysteriously leaving the apartment with a trunk tied up with twine. So he's figured out in his head that the salesman must have killed his wife and stuffed her in the trunk and now disposed of the body. So he's trying to convince his girlfriend and his friend, who's a cop that comes over, that this is what's happened, that this salesman has killed his wife. So of course they don't believe him at first, and then he's slowly trying to convince them. And it's really an interesting commentary on life in the big city, about what you can actually see of people's lives if people paid attention to each other. I mean, one of the things the cop says to Jimmy Stewart is, do you really think this guy, if he was going to kill his wife, would do it in front of the whole neighborhood to see, with his windows open and the blinds drawn? I mean, it doesn't make any sense. But if you live in a big city, you know that sometimes you don't always know who your neighbor is, and you don't know what's going on in their life. So kind of believable, there. And what else? Oh, Jimmy Stewart is a great actor. Obviously, if you've watched It's a Wonderful Life or Mr. Smith Goes to Washington, you know he's a great screen actor. He plays he plays a whole movie in the wheelchair with his leg busted. So he doesn't get up and walk around. He doesn't have any action scenes. It all depends on, it's all sustained by his facial expressions and his conversations with other people and what's happening in the rear, looking out of the rear window. So I really like this movie. I thought it was good. I thought the ending could have been a little bit more clear. I mean, The ending definitely makes sense, but I just wish they would have flushed it out more and made it more like, this happened because of this, and this is why, and, you know, all that kind of stuff. But I don't want to give away too much because I don't want to spoil it for those who haven't seen it yet. One of the other reasons why I wanted to watch Rear Window, other than it's such a classic, is that if you're a Simpsons fan like I am, it was spoofed in one of the episodes of The Simpsons. It was season 6, the first episode, called Bart of Darkness, and Bart breaks his leg jumping into the swimming pool, and so he's got to spend the summer in a wheelchair in a cast, just like Jimmy Stewart, and he's looking out his window and he thinks he's seen through the window Ned Flanders kill his wife, Maud Flanders, and it's about, you know, it mirrors the movie. And there's even a clip of Jimmy Stewart in it where he's like, there's a sinister looking kid staring at me, you know, and he's looking back at Bart. I would show you a clip from that, but I've watched that disc so much that I've misplaced it. I left it out somewhere. I looked all over my apartment. I can't find it. But if you have season 6 of The Simpsons, it's a one shaped like Homer's head. The first disc, the one with Mr. Smithers on it, first episode, Bart of Darkness. Go check it out. So now let's watch a clip of Rear Window.
I can smell trouble right here in this apartment. First you smash your leg, then you get to looking out the window, see things you shouldn't see. Trouble.
Okay, so that's going to wrap it up for this edition of the Scent Maven's Movie Corner. I hope you enjoyed it. I certainly am glad that I got through it this time instead of botching it up severely. I think I only botched it up minorly. And tune in next week for another edition of the Scent Maven's Movie Corner. Until next time, goodbye everyone out there in YouTube. See, I knew I was going to do it. You knew I was going to do it too. Goodbye everyone out there in YouTube land. Happy movie watching.